There needs to be more discussion with people actually on the ground. It's fine them talking to themselves. They have to be with farmers. And if she is talking with genuine farmers, I encourage it. There's no problem. More discussions, more talking between everybody will be a fantastic thing. But we've still got the pickup tax. We've still got the fertiliser tax. How long before they turn around and say the red diesel's going to be scrapped? We can't afford that.
Can the government win back farmers' trust, or is it a bridge too far? Defra Secretary Emma Reynolds sets out her vision for the government's flagship sustainable farming incentive. Should we continue campaigning against inheritance tax? And we take a look at the New Year's honours for farming. Welcome to the first Farmers Weekly podcast of 2026. I'm Johann.
I'm Louise Impey.
And I'm Hugh Broom.
And straight to our top story, farmers will find it easier to join Defra's revamped sustainable farming incentive when it relaunches later this year. Defra Secretary Emma Reynolds unveiled her latest thinking on the scheme in a keynote speech to the Oxford Farming Conference. This is what Emma Reynolds said.
I've heard your frustrations. The SFI scheme became too complex. The unexpected closure last year damaged trust and confidence. And too much of the available funding was being absorbed by bigger farms. So we're making 3 changes to fix that. First, we're making it simpler and more focused. Fewer actions, less complexity, easier to apply. You'll still have plenty of choice. But this government recognises SFI must work alongside food production, not displace it. So we will limit how much land can be put into certain actions and review payment rates for others. These changes will make funding go further, allowing more people to benefit from agreements. Second, we're improving fairness and accessibility. We want to see farmers helping nature thrive everywhere, not just in a few places. So we're considering ways to address this, such as an agreement value cap. This will help us meet our ambitious environmental improvement plan target to double the number of farms delivering for wildlife. So I can confirm today that we will open 2 SFI application windows this year. An initial window from June for small farms and also those without existing environmental land management agreements. Then a further window from September for all farms. Third, we're going to provide certainty and transparency. I recognise that mistakes were made in the past, and that's why I acted quickly, extending countryside stewardship mid-tier agreements and opening applications for the new and improved higher tier offer. There will be no more sudden, unexpected closures. We will give you regular updates so you know when a window is close to being fully subscribed. Together, we will work with you to get the detail of these changes right, to deliver an SFI that is simpler, fairer, and more stable. An SFI shaped with you, that works for you.
That's Defra Secretary Emma Reynolds on the soon-to-be relaunched Sustainable Farming Incentive. Louise, not the full detail, but a little bit more detail, at least.
Yes, we do have a bit more detail. Obviously, there's going to still be quite a lot to come because she has talked about relaunching the SFI to certain applicants in June this year and then opening it for others in September. And that's good news, isn't it? But of course, we don't actually have the details of the scheme yet. So it's not as though that we can say at this stage whether it's a good scheme or not, or that people will want to enter it, because of course you have to remember that there are time and costs involved in an SFI agreement. So what they're doing, so she said, in June is opening it up to small farms and to farms that haven't got an agreement currently. So she has been pushed a bit on the small farms thing. And at the moment, it sounds as though those are farms of 50 hectares or less, although she did say they were still going to be consulting on that, but it would be based on farm size and not turnover, the definition of small. So that's interesting when you consider that the average farm size in England is actually 80 hectares. So quite a few farms, obviously, that won't be in that first lot, unless they happen to be ones that haven't got an agreement currently.
Yeah, important to say that this 50 hectares is yet to be confirmed as the threshold for a small farm. 50 hectares though, Hugh, does it pass the Goldilocks test? Is it too big, too small, or just about right?
I don't know. I think it's just that, look, they just want to spread the love, don't they? They want everyone to get involved. But the problem is that you have, for those smaller farms, actually doing SFI stuff gets a bit in the way, even though it's free cash. And if you think about it, what is it? 50 hectares, about 120-ish acres, something like that. It's like you max out annually. You won't get to 10 grand, I shouldn't think, because there'll be caps on things like wild bird and all that stuff. And it's like, so I think it's a tricky one because it should complement their operation. But whilst one wouldn't want to sound in any way, shape or form ungrateful as to the fact that we get given this money for doing these things, for these public goods, equally you could see why a small farm might not bother to get involved with it because, actually it's that they're better off renting the paddock out, fill it with ponies or run a car boot sale on it or do whatever they couldn't do if they were an SFI. So it's a bit of an arbitrary thing, really. I think they've just got to really concentrate on the NFU comment about this actually is, we need the full reveal, the big reveal as to what the budget allocation will be. We know what the departmental numbers are for the next couple of years, but how are you going to slice the cake between, the landscape recovery stuff, the farm payments, yada, yada, yada. Because actually, we've said it before, if you have these caps, too big a caps, you're just going to start to pull stuff out. Large farms with lots of 6 metre margins there, if suddenly there's a cap as to how much 6 metre margin one SBI can claim, people are just going to rip it out. So I think it just needs a bit more careful thought than what some cynics might say is sort of Islington-style politicians trying to justify farm payments by saying, it's all right, we give it to all the little 50-hectare farms because they're nice, not like the big evil farms that are over 100 hectares. So there's a bit of nonsense there to sort out, isn't there?
And Louise, as well as not knowing what constitutes a small farm, we don't really yet know what any of the options are going to be under this new relaunched SFI, other than the idea that there are going to be fewer options and it will be easier for farmers to join the scheme. And I guess that raises questions of balance between the delivery of environmental benefits alongside sustainable food production.
Yeah, well, the environment wasn't mentioned hugely, was it, by Emma Reynolds? So that's a bit of a departure from what we've thought about with the SFI before, because, of course, it's been there to so that farmers can deliver environmental services. Now, that wasn't really mentioned. As you rightly said, there are going to be fewer actions. And I mean, she made the point, I think, that currently only about 40 actions have been taken up out of a list of over 100. So that would suggest they're going to slim it down quite a bit, and maybe 40 is a reasonable assumption that we can make that'll be what's available. The other thing, of course, is this whole issue of caps and limits. And she did say there will be caps on area put on some actions, but then also limits on value and how much one business can get from the SFI. So that's different to what people have been used to, and that is going to take a little bit of thinking about. She pointed out that at the moment, I think there are 10 actions that are limited by area, and they're obviously looking at doing a fair few more of those. So, yeah, as we said, the detail, we're still awaiting it, but that's what we've been able to pick up from this week.
Hugh, as a farmer listening to this, what are your thoughts on making the scheme simpler and easier to apply for, but with fewer options and caps on payments?
I think, look, you could simplify it. If you're going to have to simplify it, because ultimately, I think all of this rationalisation, all of this limits, caps, and everything else, it's all about protecting the budget, isn't it? It's obvious, and I think so. To simplify, it's probably a good thing. Again, to spread stuff out further. And I think the only way that you're going to keep the big acre farmers in the environmental scheme, so to keep the margins in and to keep the wild bird plots in and et cetera, is by rationalising everything else. And, environmentally, you can't cap everything because it's just going to be a mess. If you cap everything based on area and the amount, you can cap it as a proportion of your claim. And you could have an absolute maximum, say, for example, on wild bird seed or something like that. But for things like margins, think about it. Margins deliver, they certainly deliver loads on our farm in terms of habitat, food for birds of prey, et cetera, et cetera. And to suddenly say, oh, you can only have X amount of margin and you've got to rip the rest of it out, it's just ridiculous. So, yeah, if you rationalise it, make it simple, hopefully spread the budget further so we can carry on doing the good works lots of us have been doing for the last 25, 30 years. But I think it's, to have arbitrary caps and arbitrary numbers in there is probably the wrong thing. You've got to have a plan where you're actually going to make all of this land come together. And we all know at the end of the day, if we've said this for years, if you're going to deliver on environmental scale and actually deliver something whilst producing food, you've got to do it as a collective. You've got to create the corridors to link the farms together, to do lots of stuff. So if you've got loads of daft caps in there where you've got chunks where there's nothing happening because of caps and limits on budgets, you're not going to deliver anything at all. You might as well pack up and go home.
Louise, opening for applications, as we said, in June, but only for new farmers and smaller farmers, and yet bigger farmers have the potential to deliver bigger environmental benefits across a wider area, but they won't be able to apply until September, and neither will farmers wanting to renew existing agreements. There doesn't seem to be much in this announcement for farmers who've been doing the right thing for a long time.
Yes, that's right. I mean, the acid test really, isn't it, isn't what we think about it. It's what farmers think. And obviously, Hugh, I recognise that you are farming in your own right. But it was interesting because the first farmer I bumped into at Oxford said to me, there's nothing in it for our business. And I thought about that on my way home, as I've been lucky enough to visit that farm on a couple of occasions. So what we've got there is two brothers in partnership. They're tenants. I think it's about 2,000 acres. They produce combinable crops. They add value wherever possible. They have really gone over and above for the environment, and they do collaborate really quite widely. So that both, with the government and with commercial organisations as well. So, they're doing trials and giving feedback and generally being very helpful, but also pioneering. And that's how he saw it. So, yeah, I think he was there hoping that she was going to say some stuff which, really gave them the certainty for their business and for what they've been doing. And they've been doing it now for really quite some time. But obviously he already is in the SFI, or has a current agreement anyway. And so there's nothing really that he can latch onto at the moment. I know there's this September opening for everybody else, but of course that means there won't be any money in bank accounts, will there, until 2027. So, these combinable crops guys, as we've said before, it's really tough times for them. So I think he was really hoping that he'd be able to take some comfort from what Emma Reynolds said, but he couldn't on this occasion.
Hugh, we said this before. The SFI closed last March after running out of money. By the time it reopens for bigger farms in September, that's 18 months. And like Louise says, it's going to be 2027 before some people get any money from this scheme at all.
Yeah, look, it's the mantra I've been saying. Don't budget for any support. You can't afford to budget for support. I know that sounds mad. When it comes along, grab it with both hands, whether that's a grant, a capital grant, or you get into a bit of SFI. But based on what you just said, based on what's been laid out in terms of the timetable to deliver, you cannot budget for much of it at all, which is a shame. And it's much needed, particularly for, like as Louise said, the arable sector, utterly squeezed at the moment, utterly crippled. Look what's happening. I got emails today from machinery dealers. The discounts on kit are just ridiculous at the moment, but no one's buying any because there's no money there. So the money is needed to keep these jobs ticking over. The dairy sector is really starting to be hit with some massive price hits. Before too long, I don't know. Let's hope at the moment the red meat job's sticking up. But if that went the other way, a lot more people will be in some serious trouble. So that help is needed. But I think it's you can't budget on it. You just got to take it where you can. and hope for the best, really, because it's still really lumpy. It's all good intentions. It's all nice. Politically, it looks great on paper. When Labour voters read The Guardian and go, oh, they're doing a great job looking after the farmers in the countryside. But the reality is, it's not a lot. And actually, I go back to what I was saying before. When I look at my SFI, we've got 7 odd hectares of margin. We've got 3 hectares of wild bird plots on a total holding of about 110, 108 hectares. So it's a fair chunk of it. We're getting with that and all the bolt-ons with the the insecticide free and all that. We're basically doing 15 grand a year. And there are times it's really helpful. Don't get me wrong, but equally there are times where I look at it and think, actually, if I was growing maize on that 8 hectares in the current market with the cattle job where it is, we could do even more kilos on cows, which actually, in terms of bottom line, would make us more. Probably wouldn't be great for the environment, but that's the harsh commercial reality of it. So you're always looking at it. And at the moment, it's nice, unless you're someone that's really lazy, doesn't want to farm much and just have a few pet sheep. In terms of it getting in the way of the commercial realities, it's not the most attractive.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast. The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
Now, while Defra Secretary Emma Reynolds received a polite reception inside the Oxford Farming Conference, farmers protesting outside the conference venue voiced their anger and their tractor horns throughout her speech. Despite the government's partial climb down on inheritance tax before Christmas, they want the policy ditched altogether. They're also up in arms at increases in national insurance, higher taxes on double cab pickups, plans to target trail hunting and tighter animal welfare rules. Phil Case spoke to Henry Graham, a farmer from Newbury, Berkshire, about the increase in the inheritance tax threshold from £1 million to £2.5 million.
We're here today to fight for every farmer. We're not just fighting the people under the threshold or over the threshold. It's to make sure every farmer is on a level playing field. We're trying to do this for everyone. We're lobbying in the back government as well. We're doing things to politicians. We're asking them and pleading them and just wanting them to talk to us. This is for everybody. This isn't for people over the threshold or under the threshold. How long before they turn around and make the threshold back down in a different Labour government in a different time?
So as far as things stand for you, this just isn't enough then, this movement that they've done?
No, this isn't enough. We want to make sure every farmer is on the same playing field.
Do you think it is a case of raising the threshold higher, or is it just a case of just getting rid of this whole policy?
Personally, I would like to see rid of the whole policy. However, I can understand if they want to stop the multinationals buying land, then put in a means test and turn around like some big estates do with their tenants. You have to earn your income off the land. You have to earn it from the farm itself. If you then pass the test, you're then 100% exempt.
Is it just about IHT though? Because IHT is the straw that broke the camel's back. What are the other main issues that are really hammering home and affecting you?
We've still got the pickup tax. We've still got the fertiliser tax. How long before they turn around and say the red diesel's going to be scrapped? We can't afford that.
Yeah. So Emma Reynolds is talking of forging a new partnership with farmers at the moment. How does that make you feel?
There needs to be more discussion with people actually on the ground. It's fine them talking to themselves. They have to be with farmers. And if she is talking with genuine farmers, I encourage it. There is no problem. More discussions, more talking between everybody will be a fantastic thing. But they need to turn back on the AHT and the other policies they've brought in.
That's Berkshire farmer Henry Graham protesting for a full reversal of inheritance tax, something the National Farmers Union says won't happen any time soon. During a Farmers Weekly Question Time event at the Oxford Farming Conference, NFU President Tom Bradshaw explained his decision to stop lobbying for further concessions on inheritance tax.
There is no more political will to create further change at this moment in time. We were absolutely clear with the Prime Minister and with Emma Reynolds that we do not support the proposals as they stand now. and that when the next political opportunity arises to create further change, we will absolutely be looking to secure commitments from all opposition parties to make further amendments to inheritance tax. But I don't feel I could march everybody back up to the top of the hill without any realistic opportunity of creating further change. And now is the time, I believe, to work on the much wider agenda, which is having a huge impact on the profitability of farming. And we've talked about it already. We've got SFI, we've got trade policy, we've got animal health and welfare, we've got TB. There's so much that we need to work on, and we've got to focus on that agenda and try and get meaningful change in those areas when there isn't a political opportunity at this moment in time for further change.
Thanks, Tom. Could we do a show of hands? Who thinks that we should, as an industry, who thinks that farmers should campaign for further concessions on inheritance tax? And who thinks we should move on and try and turn the page on it and look at other things, at least for the time being? So I would say more in the latter than the former camp there. It looks like you're reading the room pretty well, Tom. I mean, certainly in terms of this room here.
For me, it's not about reading the room. I know there are still farms that are impacted, Johann, but I don't believe we can get further change. And I know that the agenda is so packed that we have got to work constructively with the government. And the NFU is a lobbying organisation to try to mitigate the impacts, to try and create the right legislative framework for the future. We're not a protest organisation. And I believe if we continue publicly fighting this now, we turn ourselves into a protest organisation rather than being a lobbying organisation to try and affect change.
That's Tom Bradshaw telling the Oxford Farming Conference why the NFU is no longer fighting the government on inheritance tax. And we'll release the full audio of that Farmers Weekly Question Time event at Oxford in the coming days as a special episode of the Farmers Weekly podcast. Hugh, an interesting position. The NFU standing down the troops. Not everyone agrees it's the right thing to do.
Standing down the troops, yeah, and a lot of people will be thinking they don't want the troops to stand down. And we've already seen in the last few hours, we've seen off the back of those comments, the CLA coming out and saying, actually, no, we should keep pushing for a full repeal of the IHT regs. We won't accept the 2.5 million times 2 if you're a married couple, 5 million allowance. So there's a bit of a line opening up, isn't there? Those farmers that you saw outside the Oxford conference this week, Johann, protesting, one of the reasons they're protesting is that they want the full repeal of it. Now, the reality is, Tom's probably right. You're not going to get it from this Labour administration. But equally, there will be some people that think it should go completely. So it does cause a bit of a line. And hey, could it cause a bit of a line? We've got NFU senior office holder elections coming up. Could it draw a line there between those that want to follow Tom's path? Could any of the other candidates come in and say, no, we should ask for a full repeal and just keep that pressure on?
Louise, Tom Bradshaw saying the NFU is a lobbying organisation, not a protest organisation. The increase in the inheritance tax threshold to £2.5 million, as much as we're going to get, he says, at least for the time being. An interesting stance.
Yeah, it was interesting. And he has really made the point, hasn't he, that they've achieved what they can achieve for now on that, and that there's an awful lot of other stuff that they need to start addressing with the government. So they do need to be able to work with them. They do need to be able to move on. But I think the thing that sort of concerns me most really is that, Emma Reynolds was talking as though they've sort of been able to wave this magic wand, and that all of a sudden, all these warm words and a change of tone means that everything is going to now be okay. And we're all going to work in partnership, et cetera, et cetera. And she's going to give clarity and there's going to be growth. But actually, as I said, the thing that concerns me is that Defra just hasn't really recognised that some of this feeling it's more than IHT that is worrying farmers at the moment, and she's going to have to spend a bit more time talking to the farming community and understanding what the grievances are if she really wants those protesting farmers to go away. It's fine to think we're going to have a new relationship and a new partnership or whatever, but you've got to acknowledge that there are some deep issues going on here, which are going to take more than a few warm words to solve.
Yeah, a renewed partnership with farmers, very much something the government says it wants to achieve. But when it comes to those farmers protesting outside the conference, Hugh, they're concerned about a whole range of issues: planning rules, national insurance, the delayed sustainable farming incentive, not just inheritance tax. Defra Secretary Emma Reynolds saying she wants to build a partnership with farmers. But in sporting parlance, has she lost the dressing room?
Has she lost the dressing room? She probably needs to be a bit more honest and say, look, I can see all this stuff's going on. But the reality is, with the budget they've got, we're not going to go back to the pre-Brexit land of milk and honey, single farm payment type years. And that's probably one of the big drivers for a lot of these producers getting really cross, is because they just can't make these sums add up. And I get that. It just be really worrying for people, unless you've been a bit cute about how your production works and you're optimizing your value of your output, or you're good at diversification. If you're a broadacres farmer or even a small farmer traditionally still farming, and some would say, well, it's too late, they knew this was coming. Some are finally, the penny's dropping, that without this support, their business looks hugely different. And I think that probably catalyses all of the other issues that are going on, whether it's the markets, whether it's all the other policy change stuff. That's what the main thing that's catalysing it. I think there are still a lot of farm businesses who still have not got their head round the radical change in the support landscape.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast. The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
You're listening to the Farmers Weekly Podcast, the first episode of the Farmers Weekly Podcast for 2026, and a warm welcome wherever you're listening to us from. As always, we'd love to hear from you. You can email us at podcast@fwi.co.uk. And if you're in the UK itself, you can message us by texting the word farm, followed by a message to 88440. Do make your points known. Tell us what you're up to. Tell us your views on where you think farming is going in 2026. Hugh, a very cold start to the new year. Some freezing temperatures out there. A little warmer over the last 24 hours perhaps, but you've been having problems with blue pipes.
Soft southern pipe. It was really cold here. According to my sensors on the farm, we got down to -8 point something here. And actually, we're in one bit of the farm's in a real frost hollow, because 4-degree differential was something like 4 miles up the valley. We got down to nearly -9. And then when it all thawed out yesterday, where I've got my herbal lays with me controlled grazing, I sort of hung the pipe up on the fence post so it doesn't get grown in. And the water was still live. I'd forgotten I hadn't isolated it. Anyway, all thawed out. And then there's these great fountains coming. And I just thought from a distance, oh, that's the couplings just blowing apart, which obviously they do, the joiners. But actually, when I got up to it, I went out there on the quad, the actual blue pipe, the 20 mil and the 25, which is running the main lines, the actual blue pipe had actually cracked. Now, again, people in the far north of Scotland or places where it gets even colder probably are thinking, hey, soft southern idiot. That happens all the time with us. I've never had that happen here. I've had things blow apart. I've never had the blue pipe actually burst apart. So perhaps they've changed the formulation of the plastic in it, or we had such a deep frost it caused it to kick on. But it has been very cold. Obviously, the weather has been causing all sorts of issues for lots of reasons for lots of people all over the country, hasn't it? And there's probably a bit more fun and games to come weather-wise as well. But hopefully it won't be as cold.
And Louise, on the arable side, cold weather, much needed and welcome for cereal growers, although challenges, of course, if you're lifting frozen sugar beet.
I think it will be welcomed for some of the cropping, but obviously not for some of the problems that Hugh's just described. It's a bit of a reset, isn't it? These crops went in the autumn in really good conditions, and that then was very mild, wasn't it? So we got quite a lot of lush growth. We were getting disease on some of that, which is understandable. But then, you get a cold snap like this, and that just helps enormously, not just for disease, actually for carryover of pests as well. So yeah, I mean, it's good that we're having some cold weather. Unfortunately, at the moment, we're also having an awful lot of rain, but we'll have to see what happens. I think there's snow to come, and then maybe we'll be through all that and out the other side. But yeah, crops getting a bit of a reset, and yeah, that will be a good thing for many people.
Time to stay nice and warm and wrapped up in the farm office and maybe plan for spring, Hugh. Have you been looking ahead at all?
Not really, no. I've been out there thawing out pipes, sorting out livestock, as you do, and carry on feeding the beef machine. But no, yes, looking at some fertiliser prices, actually. Incidentally, the rain is much needed, particularly here, because we had like no rain hardly over Christmas. And up until yesterday, we'd had literally, for January, had like barely 2 mil of rain. So, yeah, every bit of rain's welcome at the moment. Fertiliser-wise, looking forward, yes, I have been planning on. And actually, pricing up some more fertiliser. It's not moved much. It's a bit steady, I think. But talking to the people on the other end of the phone, suddenly everyone jumped on the fertiliser thing again this Monday, I think, asking prices, having stalled those decisions. Some people obviously stalling decisions before Christmas. And trying to, I suppose in many cases, people are just trying to put it off and put it off and put it off because the money's just not there.
And Louise, in terms of the fertiliser market, some interesting developments this past week or so in Europe, making fertiliser cheap again.
Yeah, it is quite interesting, actually. It seems as though the EU has already suspended fertiliser tariffs, and then it's looking at ways that it might be able to halt the carbon tax that is coming in. And I mean, we've discussed that before, haven't we? And I think that was going to put about £50 a tonne onto the cost of fertiliser. So, yeah, the EU has committed, it says, to making fertiliser more affordable for farmers. And they had this extraordinary meeting earlier this week, and they looked at a number of measures, but they have actually temporarily suspended tariffs on certain fertiliser imports, and they're now looking at how they can suspend or pause or whatever the carbon border adjustment mechanism. So really responding to farmers' concerns about that, and also to concerns about food security. So, gosh, if it's going to be a bit cheaper in the EU, I wonder really what that means for fertiliser prices here, but we'll have to see. Hugh, maybe you're right to hold on for a bit longer.
Don't know, but it's amazing. You think about what you've just said about happening in the last week in the EU area with the Commission, and you've only got to go back 5 years, and you had the field to fork strategy where they wanted half of Europe to be organic and to cut pesticide and spray use by 50%, and to it was all going to be some sort of utopian Guardian reader's dream. And here is the Commission. For 5 years. To imagine the Commission turning and saying, we've got to make fertiliser more affordable. Oh my God, the penny's finally dropped. This stuff doesn't just grow out the ground with the fairies. So yeah, it's a huge thing. And you're right. What will it mean? Will the UK government have to look at their fertiliser tax and have to look at the emission stuff? And actually, critically, on the UK and to a degree the European platform, particularly with the UK, with all of the stuff that's been going on, the sort of the political and all of the stuff that's been going on over Christmas and Venezuela and all the big leaders pummeling their chests, that whole security landscape, we really should, and keep saying it, we're not looking hard enough at our own security. We're not producing any ammonia, as I understand, in the UK. We're importing raw material from America to turn it into AN at Bellingham. We've got no other production. We are utterly exposed in the event of some horrendous black swan type event where there is no fertiliser, it's gone tomorrow. Imagine that. You click your fingers, there's no fertiliser available. Boom. What happens? Well, there's a lot of empty shelves in 6 months' time, isn't there? A lot of disruption. So perhaps those governments are starting to wake up, but there's a heck of a lot more waking up to do, though, isn't it? In terms of getting, they talk about getting our farms resilient. We need the nation to be resilient.
We need the nation to be resilient and the commodity markets too. Hugh, what are the numbers doing this week?
Thank you very much, Johann. Finished steer deadweight eases back again, I'm afraid, this week, 647.4. That is back from 653.2. So some heat coming out of that slowly. The live weight, 376.1. That's actually up on last week, which was 368.5. To the sheep rings, SQQ, deadweight on lambs, 721 dead. That's gone up 21p on the week. And actually, that's stronger. If you go back a year ago, that's a good bit stronger, 708.1 this time last year. So there's still plenty of fire in the sheep market. Even the live weight's gone up after Christmas as well, 342.9. That's gone up nearly 20, well, just over 20p, or just under 20p, sorry, on the week. So plenty of demand there. Pig price, not much good there, I'm afraid, 193.4. That goes back about 5 pence or just under 5 pence on the week. So a big drop on those pig numbers there. If we go to the arable markets now, and that's not a particularly nice place to be at the moment, I'm afraid. Feed wheat's gone back a pound, 163.40. This week's spot. Milling wheat goes back £5, 177 dead. Feed barley, that's actually gained a bit of value. It's gained about £5 on the week, £153.50. Oilseed rape loses value, almost losing, about £8, gone back to 398.10. Feed peas stand on at 209. Feed beans at 203.6. That's gone up just over £1. And if you are filling up tractors with diesel, we're always filling up tractors with diesel. 65.24. So that's actually gone back almost. In fact, it's gone back just over a penny on the week. So 65.24 is this week's red diesel price.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast. The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
And finally, a pioneering soil scientist topped the 2026 New Year's Honours list for people in agriculture. Professor Lorna Dawson of the James Hutton Institute was made a Dame Commander for her services to innovations in soil and forensic science. Now, forensic soil science is the application of soil analysis in criminal investigations, using it to link people, objects, or indeed activities to specific locations. At the forefront of forensic soil science for over 20 years, Professor Dawson has reported and advised on over 200 criminal cases, including high-profile prosecutions such as the World's End murders in Edinburgh. Other farming-related honours included a CBE for former Defra Chief Scientific Advisor Professor Gideon Henderson and an MBE for cheesemaker Richard Clothier, Managing Director of Wyke Farms, for services to sustainable agriculture and food production. Well, joining us on the line now is Professor David Main, Deputy Vice-Chancellor of the Royal Agricultural University Cirencester, who received a British Empire Medal for services to animal welfare. David, congratulations, and we're honoured that you're speaking to us here on the Farmers Weekly podcast. This British Empire Medal is for your work with the Home Office's Animals in Science Committee, which I guess some of our listeners won't have heard of.
Indeed. What it is, the committee's primary role is to safeguard the welfare of animals that are used for experimental purposes, i.e., scientific experiments, etc. So there's a lot of animals used for very important things like making sure medicines are safe and work effectively. It's a contentious area, you might say, so that's why legislation has been put in place for an independent group to care for, make sure welfare standards are applied. So it's a legal framework for checking the welfare of animals, experimental animals.
And farm animals do form a small part of that work, so there is a link here to agriculture.
Indeed, yes. A small number of farm animals are used in those experiments. Most of the animals in that setting are rodents, but actually the safeguards that experimental animals are in some way they're similar to farm animals. My primary area of academic expertise, if you like, on teaching and research is the welfare of farm animals. Actually, so. I've worked with Bread Tractor, RSPCA Assured, Soil Association, for example, on how those voluntary market farm assurance schemes safeguard welfare of animals in their care. So it's quite similar in a way. It's about how society is assured that the welfare of animals, whether they're used for meat, i.e. farm animals, or they're used for a scientific purpose, i.e. experimental animals, that the welfare of those animals are cared for appropriately.
So how exactly does the committee work then, David?
So the committee membership, they're appointments made by the minister, but the committee itself works independent of government. And that's a quite important detail, because it means that the committee can investigate any matter it wishes to, and it can provide any report or evidence to the government that it wants to. And that's an important distinction, because it ensures that the relevant minister has to pay attention to what an independent group, whose their role is to safeguard the welfare of animals on behalf of society, the minister has to be mindful of that. So the independence of the committee is an important remit, and the members of the committee, who as chair I had delight in chairing, they usually provide their services actually free of charge as volunteers, and they're doing it to make sure that the animals are properly cared for and the science is suitably justified.
So recognition of that too then, a good start to 2026 for yourself, and a trip to Buckingham Palace in the offing sometime in the near future.
Indeed, that's right. It will be, yes, for this award. Apparently, it's a garden party and also a local service in Gloucestershire as well. So it's nice to have a regional link.
Professor David Main, congratulations again and enjoy your visit to Buckingham Palace. Louise, let's start with you. Always interesting when farming is recognised by the honours system and indeed wider society.
Well, yes, it's good. I mean, look, farming underpins a lot of other things that go on in society, doesn't it? So, yeah, no, it was really welcome news to see quite a few of these. And I mean, obviously, there's a number of them from the research world, and that's very well deserved. But then we've also got recipients also at the coalface as well. So, Richard Clothier, for example, Managing Director of White Farms, fantastic, services to sustainable agriculture and food production. So well done to everybody, really. I looking through the list, I have visited and had a very interesting session with Professor Simon Pearson, who's up at the Lincoln Institute of Agri-Food Technology. That's part of Lincoln University. So there's some really interesting work going on up there, actually, with robotics and all sorts of stuff. So really good news. I think, Hugh, you will know a couple from the southeast as well who've received honours.
Yeah, a big Sussex does well. John Holt, dairy farmer down in West Sussex, and Gwyn Jones, many people know, former NFU office holder, involved in the Ruminant Health and Welfare Board now. He got an OBE. He's done lots of work over the years, chairing various things. He certainly wrote me into a few things over the years as well. So now, all well deserved. And the key thing is there's a good smattering of farming people in there, because we've had some years where there's been not much farming stuff at all, other than the usual retiring Defra civil servants, which is fair enough. They get a gong as well as a government pension for a year, a life of service. But we've said in the past that, to get these awards out there and to get them into, people have actually got to nominate people. And so unless we're actually nominating people, you won't actually see them coming through. So clearly there's been some good nominations going on within the farming sector. We need more, because there's lots of other industries, which I would say if you're a dull so like me and you download the CSV of honours and put it on the old Excel, you can start to distill down sector by sector what does better or worse. And we're still way down there. We're obviously all far too modest in the world of farming.
Well, congratulations to everyone who received a New Year's honour, all thoroughly well deserved. And yes, perhaps we do need to be loud and proud, as they say, when it comes to farming. Shout it from the rooftops for agriculture. We'll see if we can do a little bit more of that ourselves for farming throughout 2026, and do join us as we do if you can. That, though, is about it for this episode of the Farmers Weekly podcast. Thank you, as always, for listening. We hope you've enjoyed what you've heard. If you have, please do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you've really enjoyed listening to us, please do leave us a 5-star review. We'll be back next week with another episode and all the latest news, views and analysis of all the big stories affecting UK agriculture. Until then, though, do have a good week yourselves, whatever you're doing in the world of farming. I'm Johann.
I'm Louise Impey.
And I'm Hugh Broom.
Thank you for listening.